It's left in the day. Another record lines up in the New York markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, a triple-digit winner. The Nasdaq strong in its own right. We're coming right back with the closing countdown here. And then after the bell, complete coverage of earnings reports. Texas Instruments and Kraft on tap. We're going to bring those numbers to you as soon as they cross the wires. 4 p.m. Eastern in the second hour of the closing bell. Well, that will be the biggest number you've ever seen for a closing number on the Dow Jones Industrial Average this afternoon, in excess of 12,100. The Nasdaq rallying along with it this afternoon. We're less than 2 minutes from ringing the first closing bell of the week. Time for the closing countdown. Here's Mary Thompson on the floor. What's the story of the day, Mary?
Well, taking a look as we head toward the closing bell, we do have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 108 points. Of course, it looks like the Dow is going to finish again above that 12,100 mark. 12,111 is the level. What we are seeing, or what we saw today, is this: despite a much larger than expected loss, or a loss of over $5 billion, almost $6 billion, I should say, from Ford, the market shrugged off that. They shrugged off higher Treasury yields, focusing instead on the fact that we are seeing weaker energy prices. Oil pulled back, and that provided the fuel for the Dow's rally today. So again, we're heading towards the first triple-digit gain for the Dow since October 4th, and yet another record close. Among the winners today, Walmart up on its plans to pull back on its expansion. Also, GM closing close to a year high ahead of its earnings report on Wednesday. We saw strength in Caterpillar rebounding from Friday's decline. These were the drivers of the Dow. There's the closing bell rung by Charles Ledsinger, who is the CEO and Vice Chairman of Choice Hotels International. Now the closing bell with Dylan Radigan.
The Enron sentence just came down in excess of 20 years, 292 months. Total sentencing for Jeffrey Skilling, former chief executive at Enron. That works out to 120 months to each count here, 2 to 14. There will be consecutive elements there, but again, in excess of 20 years, 292 months comes down on Enron. Tyler Matheson is at the alerts desk with the latest details. Tyler.
Well, you've really nailed it there, Dylan. In fact, it is 24 years and 4 months in prison for Jeffrey Skilling, the convicted former CEO of Enron, charged with masterminding, in effect, the largest corporate fraud in American history, at least one of them. Once again, the judge in that case, Sim Lake, in federal court, has sentenced Mr. Skilling now to 292 months, 24 years, 4 months. Our team is on the scene. They don't allow cameras or audio in that courtroom, and Scott Cohn is making his way to our installation outside of federal court in Houston, and we will hear from him momentarily about the entire scene there and whether Mr. Skilling will be remanded into custody immediately or will stay free pending his planned appeals. But as you said there, Dylan, 292 months or 24 years, 4 months in prison for 52-year-old Jeffrey Skilling. Back to you.
Tyler, thank you very much. Another record day on Wall Street. Dow Jones Industrial Average once again closing at a fresh all-time high. Good afternoon to you, by the way. I'm Dylan Radigan. We are at Cnbc headquarters. Maria.
Hi, Dylan. Thanks so much. I'm Maria Bartiromo, coming to you today from the White House. I just sat down with President Bush for a wide-ranging interview on everything from the economy, the war in Iraq, to corporate governance issues. With the midterm election just 2 weeks away, I asked him about the declining cost of crude oil. Why do you think oil prices have fallen from close to $80 to below $60?
You know, I would hope it would be the markets adjusting. Although I think there was a certain amount of speculation, kind of betting on the come, hedging in the marketplace.
Later on in the show with my exclusive full interview with the president. That's at 4:30 Eastern. Dylan, back to you.
Hi, Maria. Thank you very much. We're all looking forward to that. Back on Wall Street, the bulls clearly in charge today. Stock staging a triple-digit rally, setting another record for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Walmart leading the way. We should point out that investors are waiting on third-quarter results right now from Texas Instruments and Kraft Foods, which are both due out minutes from right now as the bulls took charge from the get-go this morning. Blue chips breaking 12,100 for the first time ever. effectively out of the gate. Walmart and weaker energy prices leading that way. Over the last month alone, the Dow up 5.25%, driving the Dow today. I mentioned Walmart, the stock up 3%, and Big Blue, IBM, up another 1.25%, and that stock has had plenty of momentum going back into last week. The NASDAQ continues to get higher and higher, too. Nowhere near a record, but plenty of advance. Google and Apple, the two stellar performers in that market, 0.5%. The advance in the NASDAQ composite. S&P 500 splits the difference. The transport's ultimately actually a little bit weaker this afternoon, so if you're wondering where some of the weakness was, there it was. Otherwise, again, technology, retail, very strong on the day. 0.6%, the pickup on the S&P 500, as we do have the Dow's new record covered for you. Mary Thompson, our eye on the floor at the big board, as well as market strategist Alan Krall of Trevor Stewart Burton and Jacobson, and Donald Cox of BMO Financial. We start with you, Mary. What's the story of the day?
Well, the story of the day is the first triple-digit gain for the Dow Jones Industrial Average since October 4th, drives it to a new record closing high of 12,116 as we settle out. Earlier today, it hit 12,125. The reason? Investors shrugged off higher Treasury yields, focusing instead on the lower oil prices that we saw today, and that helped to drive the Dow higher. Quick check of the Dow winners. Dylan mentioned Walmart. GM higher, this despite its rival Ford posting a loss of almost $6 billion, 5.8 to be exact. 3M a winner. Caterpillar rebounding from mid-slide on Friday after it cut its outlook for 2006, and IBM. Retailers winners as well. Not only do we see lower oil prices, we see lower gasoline prices, and that suggests that there's going to be more money in consumer pockets to spend at the retailers. JCPenney, Kohl's, Nordstrom's, Abercrombie & Fitch, all finishing at multi-year highs. American Express a loser after the company came out and reported earnings of 78 cents a share. That was better than expected. Its revenues were a little light, though, and that caused some investors to take some profits from the financial services company, which has seen an increase in the number of its card holders. We also want to mention Wrigley's up on the news that its profits rose 13%. It also got a new CEO, William Perez. He's the first outsider to run the maker of the chewing gum. Remember, he used to run Nike. He was the first outsider to run Nike, but he actually left after a dispute with the company's founder, Phil Knight. Let's see if he has better luck at Wrigley's. And Hasbro's a winner, too. The toy maker posting some much better than expected results for the third quarter, and that helped to drive its stock higher. Dylan, back to you.
All right, let's talk a little bit about oil prices. They lost ground this session. The market growing more skeptical that OPEC is capable of actually following through on its decision last week to scale down daily production